extra lyric book then, just in case.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I do have one. Written down here as well. So.
All right, just normally it would be over here, but it was still in my back. I'm like this close to finishing all the vocals on the Artificial Brain record. We were just doing them yesterday, and we kind of cut
the new one
because the blizzard was getting so crazy, you know.
Oh, nice, man. I like how you just pulled this tome of lyrics out here. That's awesome.
It's like an old school trapper keeper, man. I got everything in here.
Yeah, that is awesome. That's like something I keep my magic cards in or something right over there.
Yeah, I sold a lot of my magic cards right before to do like a little 3-day weekend trip with Artificial Brain once, and there was like a local store here that'll buy them. I made like $250 off a shoebox full of magic cards, and the guy told me were kind of rare, and I looked it up later. He did give me a fair price on them.
Yeah. So, I've actually, I've been there, dude. It's funny that you used to play Magic. That's like one of my first loves. So like, I still play it actually.
Well, I'm 38. I used to play it when it first came out, like when I was like about 12 or 13. Like I probably had a few that were worth a couple of bucks there, man. But
yeah, I remember making like 300 off a stack of just like 12, and I was just like, whoa, this seems pretty lucrative. So at that point, I was just like in love with the art and stuff like that. It's got some of the most metal art in like all of the medium, dude. They have some great artists there, man. Some that have also crossed over and done metal albums as well, actually. Yeah.
Well, that was my trajectory. It was like Dungeons and Dragons, Magic the Gathering, death metal. You know what I mean? And like the artwork is what the whole time.
I went exact opposite. Actually, I was into metal first, and I actually found Magic before I found D&D. But we actually like just recently got a group of friends like trying to get a D&D night going. But then fucking 2020 happened, so that was a little bit out the door. But well, first I got to introduce you, man. We're getting caught up talking about Magic. We are here with Big Will, aka Uncle Buck, from Artificial Brain. They are a technical death metal band. It's a bit extreme, elements of progressive, a dash of avant-garde. It's like cosmic chaos that's controlled. Sounds like the universe's heat death or something, So thanks for joining us, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me, man. I'm glad to be here, man.
Yeah. Well, man, I mean, I'm a big fan. I've loved Artificial Brain for a while. Had no idea at the time in like 2015, 16, when I first found you guys, that you were also attached to so many projects, let alone had your own podcast yourself, the Heavy Hole podcast. So shout out to that as well.
Yeah, shout out to Tom and Justin, my co-hosts on the Heavy Hole podcast, man. Yep.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
I try to keep busy. Even before the pandemic, we were trying to keep busy with a bunch of stuff. So now we're even extra busy, man.
I noticed, and now I'm going to be busy with that back catalog of episodes, man. You can like put it out all the time. I just listened to the one, I think it was from like Friday with the guy from, is it Seppo from Andromeda?
Yeah, Seppo from Adramalik and Demigod, man. That was like one like kind of like a lifetime goal for me with the podcast, because
I've heard you talk about them so much. Yeah,
it was like real interesting get for me, man. And the guy was real easy to talk to. It was cool.
Yeah. I like how he was so worried about it, but no, he was great, dude. He was bringing up everything from like lineup changes to witches. Like it was crazy, man. But, so let's see. I want to get to some of your members as well. So in the band, you have Sam Smith, who's on bass, also been on the podcast a number of times as well, and now currently in Luminous Vault, which is another heavy band, man. I need to try to get one of them on or something for that too.
Yeah,
and then John LaCastro. Oh yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, Sam's got a band. He plays bass in Fawn Limbs, which is another band that put out material recently. Yeah, a lot of people dig that, man. Yeah.
Right. FAWN, right?
Yep.
Like a deer. Yeah, Fawn Limbs. Okay. All right. I got to shout them out too. And then John LaCastro, ex Pyrexia as well. So I know you've known him for a long time. And Dan, is it Garguilo?
Gargiulo.
Gargiulo. Okay, I knew I was gonna butcher that. Sorry.
Here on Long Island, there's a lot of those Italian last names. I'm not Italian myself, but I grew up with a lot of Italian people out here on Long Island.
Yeah, I'm nowhere near Italian. I'm like Irish, German, Scottish, that sort of stuff. So really bad with names in general, but especially, with Italians and like any sort of like accented names or anything like that. Let's see. Dan was in Revocation. He's played live with a Bath and Havoc. That's some pretty epic people to play with too, man. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah. He's been around, man. He's got some experiences.
Yeah, he's definitely a shredder. And then since 2014, is it? I'm gonna butcher this too. Sorry, Oleg Zalman. Is that right?
Right. Oleg.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
How did you guys get him?
Well, he's a Brooklyn guy, but of Russian descent with that name, obviously.
Right.
But he was in a band early on. This band Hagenti, Haagenti. I think it's one of those demonic band names from Long Island here.
Right.
And they've since put out a bunch of material without Oleg, but he was in that band early on, and then he was doing guitar covers on YouTube of Artificial Brain songs.
Oh,
And
nice.
Dan Gargiulo being in revocation and being on tour constantly, we decided to get Oleg in the band to play guitar so we could tour more, play shows more, and that sort of thing. And now it's evolved to the point where on the upcoming record, all three guitarists have tracked parts and have contributed. So
Nice.
Oleg, he kind of like went from being a guy playing guitar covers on YouTube to being our friend that filled in for us to being a full-fledged member of the band.
This is the way of the future now. I mean, it's so easy. Like it's crazy.
Yeah.
Speaking of covers of you guys, have you seen those piano covers? Somebody has done entire albums of yours in pianos, and damn it, the name is escaping me right now. I can't believe I didn't write this down for this, but they are so good. I'm going to link it in the description, absolutely. But somebody,
well, you got to go to it's Tommy Bonviale. Well, speaking of butchering last names,
yeah, right.
But you can go to the Brutal Keys YouTube channel. He covered the entire Infrared Horizon album on piano. But he's actually, I know. Just recently when we were corresponding, I turned you onto my podcast. But we had an interview with him, and we kind of broke down that whole process about him. Like I guess you'd say transposing or transcribing the guitar parts into piano and his background. He's actually in a band, Virulent Depravity, that's coming out with an album soon that has him playing piano in like a brutal death metal band. So yeah,
I love that, and I love that combo. So
yeah, Brutal Keys YouTube channel is the way to check that out, man. Shout out to Tom. We had a good time interviewing him a few weeks ago.
Yeah, he has done all kinds of stuff too. That was really crazy. And piano is just one of the heaviest instruments as well, and can be used, so versatilely. So I'm glad that somebody is, listening to y'all's type of music and transposing it, as you said, over there. So, and then lastly, you got Keith Abrami. Is that how you pronounce his last name? Okay, yeah. Absolute shredder on the drums, and also of the band Shredded, and also Piron he's played live with, and also Mercury as well. Which is Piron's another crazy ass band.
It's a good story with how he played with Piron, because our first nationwide tour with Artificial Brain, we were on the road for something like 5 weeks straight. It was us and Piron all in a van. Like I think it was about 9 dudes in like a 12-person van or something like that.
That's a good time.
For Geigen from Chicago, and that's Keith did double duty. He played drums for Piron and Artificial Brain every night of that tour.
Jeez, man.
Yeah, and I believe he might have played drums for them on a European tour, I think, too, man. So he was in Piron for a while. Shredded is a band people could check out. He's not with them anymore because he lives in Denmark now.
Oh, wow. Okay. Oh, that's right, because he is now married to Mercury, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's they're gonna have some metal kids, man. That's crazy.
Well, yeah. Shout to him, man. He's already, he's more of a family involved type of guy in the game, man. You know what I mean? But he's talking about being a shredder on drums, having recorded the vocals the last few weeks, and been really focused in on the new album that's coming out the last few weeks. People who are fans of his drum work are not going to be disappointed one bit. I
mean, how could they be? I mean, you can also see live sets. I've been watching in the past couple weeks, and it's just crazy. I mean, you've done something right when they give you the drum can, and a lot of the videos, they'll give them the drum can. And I'm a drummer myself, and I know you're getting back into, getting your drumming chops up too. So just watching him, man, so inspirational. It's insane.
Well, it's intimidating to watch somebody like that. It's intimidating to someone like me who's just trying to get my basic chops up. But yeah, just to make the point that it's been a few years since the album, and people know that the band hasn't been as active lately, man. But he's still got his chops up, that's for sure. Yep.
Yeah. So he is coming back for the new record, assuming, right?
Yeah. The new album that's going to be coming out. The only difference is that the addition of Oleg and tracking. It's the same Green members that have been on the first 2 albums, but you're going to hear Oleg on there a little more. And we got some cool guest vocalists that are still top secret.
Oh, nice, nice. Well, here's a good segue. I know you have been a guest vocalist yourself on so many projects. I mean, really like too many to name. But are you doing anything, that we haven't heard yet? Is there any collaborations that you have done like either during the pandemic or that you have like coming up or anything like that?
Well, I've done a few guest things. There's a band called Funeral Dancer from Long Island, which is younger musicians from Long Island that have been around in some other local bands. Um,
Funeral dancer. All right.
yeah, I did a guest spot on a song of theirs that's going to be coming out eventually, and there's some other behind the scenes things I don't know if I'm at liberty to say, but I always pop up once or twice a year as a guest on somebody else's album.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Recently, one of my personal favorites, Imperial Triumphant's Vile Luxury. That stuff is just dirty, dirty. And track 3 is, I believe, the one that you're on. I mean, they have some crazy stuff and some crazy live performances as well. Those guys are New York as well, right?
Yeah, wild band. We kind of before the pandemic, unfortunately, but we were kind of part of the same localized scene in
Right,
New York City where there was a lot of shows going on at the St. Vitus Bar in Brooklyn,
right.
and other venues too. But that was like home base for us, and we played with Imperial Triumphant a few times over the years, and I got to go see them, and they would be at our shows. Man, nice guys.
Hmm.
And another band that I interviewed over last summer on my podcast, and we broke down a lot of that stuff. When I did the part on their album, I was actually Artificial Brain was on tour with Cattle Decapitation in 2017, and I was home for about a week because I had a legal issue years ago, and I had trouble getting back and forth to Canada until that's resolved. So we have my
Oh,
friend
right.
Paolo fills in on vocals for Artificial Brain in Canada. So I was home for about a week of that tour while that was going on in Canada, and I made use of that week to go do the one night I drove out to where they rehearsed Imperial Triumphant, and I did that guest spot. So I was,
Nice, nice. You're in, you're out. One night, you just like track it, you're done.
yeah. I love. Well, that's why the guest spots are fun, man.
Yeah.
It's less involved. No strings attached.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and you kind of answered it, but I was going to ask, like, do people usually like, are you seeking out bands, or are they seeking you out, or is it more just kind of like a right place, right time thing, and it ends up just like linking up or something?
Most of the time, it's like it's a band that I'm friends with already, and it's maybe they've been on our album or we played a show together or something like that. There's been a few bands that just reached out to me, and I did the part. There was once or twice where I unfortunately I didn't get the message in time, or I couldn't, because I don't have the capability to record in my house, so maybe I
Right,
couldn't
right,
get studio time in time, and I couldn't work it out with someone. But for the
right,
most
right.
part, it's usually a friend of mine. I never want to turn someone down. Unless unless the project is for some crazy reason, like I don't want to be part of it or whatever, be associated with it. But that would have to be extreme. But like,
Yeah,
I never want to turn someone down. It's flattering when someone wants to get your collaboration or your guest spot. But like I said, I don't have a recording facility in my house like a lot of people do with their computer nowadays.
hmm,
And also, I'm trying to do a podcast episode, an interview or something once a week. I got
hmm.
stuff with my own bands. So it's a lot, man. And then besides, on top of all that, I got a regular non-metal day job and non-metal family members and stuff like that.
Right,
So
right.
it's tough to keep up with those guest spots and collaborations because you don't want to let someone down. Once you commit to it, you want to make sure you do it and you do it right.
Yeah, yeah. He's got a life, people. Give him a break, okay? So,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah, yeah.
so speaking of which, the heavy hole. So, if you don't do it at your, facility here, like, do you have a place that you go and record it or something that you have to travel to?
Well, yeah. The thing on the Heavy Hole podcast, you hear my voice so much, like 90% of the time that one of the hosts is talking, it's me. But the other two guys, Tom and Justin, they live in my town here, Huntington and Long Island,
Hmm.
and they're a few years younger than me. We actually met through the death metal scene a few years ago, and they're very technologically capable. They're both audio engineers.
Hmm.
They do kind of dabble in other types of computer related work. So Tom already does his own podcast with his own co-host called Roast Mortem. It's more of like a history and comedy based podcast where they kind of roast historical figures and things like that.
That's a
But
great name.
yeah, it is. Well, you should give it a shot if you're. It's not necessarily metal, but it is funny.
Oh, I
Um,
will.
yeah, and so he was, he already, they already had the recording facilities. They had kind of like home studios themselves, and like I said, I'm a little bit of a caveman when it comes to technology, so those guys are able to fill in the gaps there because
I
all
feel
they
the
have,
same, man. So don't feel too bad.
yeah, now all I have to do is book guests and show up, and those guys handle the editing and the recording and all that sort of thing, and they're good at what they do. So that's that pretty much.
Right, right. Awesome. I also want to talk about my favorite project of yours. I mean, I got to launch into it because Absorbing Black Ignition and Mewn Funeral from
Mm,
2014's Labyrinth Constellation. I first
mm,
heard those when I lived in San Francisco. I was doing a lot of commuting. I had like 2 hours a day, and that was my most listened to two songs. Like my most listened to album for that year was Labyrinth Constellation, just commuting back and forth, and it really kind of like matched my whole mood. Like those the fierce pacing right off the bat of Absorbing Black Ignition. It's like a Pandora's box almost was like opened up with that like first riff kind of shaking out and everything. What inspired you guys to, I know you had made music before that, but what kind of inspired you guys at first to go with this like crazy cosmic space theme that and I'm sure so many others, grew attached to? I know it's been done, but with the album art that you guys chose, with the lyrics, which I want to get into after this, like what it made you guys ultimately decide that? Was that one person's idea, or was that kind of like a thing that was voted in or something?
well, thank you first of all. That's awesome.
Oh yeah.
And I got to see San Francisco through touring with Artificial Brain. I was reflecting before how I never saw the West Coast or knew about it except for in movies and in music and stuff like that until I
Right.
got to go out there, man. I love the West Coast, man. I can't wait till the pandemic, things change and we could travel a little bit more, man.
Right.
And Texas too, man. But to answer your question, the whole kind of we call it space death metal. We always kind of kept the base terms, to, not and when I joined Artificial Brain, it had already been called Artificial Brain, and some preliminary songs were written. At this point, I'd have to go back. The other guys might be able to tell you what songs from Labyrinth Constellation.
Right.
I know Brain Transplant was written early on. Stuff like, and the songs that were on the demos were probably around when I joined the band. But I joined the band very early on. There wasn't really a lead singer before me. They were Sam and Dan were kind of trying to do vocals while they played their instruments, and they made the decision, let's find a vocalist. And I think there was one guy that didn't really work out, and then I joined up, and that was it. I was with the band, and at that point, the band is already called Artificial Brain. They're already kind of trying to back this space death metal thing. So in joining, I mean, I was cool with that because I had been in a band called BioLitch that was more science fiction, and and also a band out of Brooklyn called Andromorphous Rexalia, which is, I don't know if they would call themselves science fiction because they have very strong beliefs in extraterrestrials, but the lyrics were still in that realm.
Science fact, right?
Yeah, that's what they would, that say their lyrics are, which fair enough. But so my headspace and my lyrics, doing guttural vocals for a science fiction death metal band wasn't necessarily like new to me. And then and as a matter of fact, it was kind of like perfect now that I look back. So I was like, that's cool. I don't want to censor any of the Blood and Guts bands or the Satan bands or whatever. There's a lot of them in my record collection, but science fiction is more my wheelhouse. So as soon as I joined Artificial Brain, there was that. But then, when you talk about the music and the writing, unfortunately, I'm probably not the best member if you want to get into the guitars and the songwriting. That's Dan Gargiulo is responsible for the majority of the songwriting.
Right.
A lot of this is his brainchild in terms of the music and the guitar work. But I know Gorguts, obviously, at the time, Death Spell Omega. I know Abagor. Those are bands that I had obviously already heard Gorguts, but those are bands that the Artificial Brain guys really turned me on to when I first started in the band, as well as like your more traditional Pestilence and Death. So, and I think the idea of having a band that maybe took some of those sonic dissonant influences from black metal and made it into more of a death metal a project and a death metal structured band in a way with those black metal influences was there. And then I came in with the guttural vocals, and I think my persona is not really, I'm not really the mysterious European guy in the woods, big
Right.
group. So it's a little more death metal to people, I guess. I don't know. So Artificial Brain has always been this balance of black metal atmosphere and death metal intensity. and it's been a space death metal band since they started it back in the day. I mean, we all love science fiction in our own way. You know, I'm
Right.
sure that I could give you my top 3 or 4 science fiction movies, and it would be different from the other members of the band. There's
Right.
also a little bit of an age gap. Collectively, there's probably about 7 or 8 years, maybe a little bit less between the youngest member and the oldest member. In the band, so we span a few different generations too. But everyone definitely agrees in the science fiction themed death metal is where we wanted to go with it.
Yeah, yeah, it's such a cool theme. I mean, and to me personally, like, you mentioned everybody likes science fiction. Some of my favorite stuff is H.P. Lovecraft and like Isaac Asimov and like all these like classic sci-fi or space themed stuff. So it's when you get this kind of like horror themed music. Yeah, oh man, there you go, dude. There you go. For those of you who can't see, he's holding up 2 hardback covers, looks like, of Isaac Asimov, which is awesome. And I can't reach, but right up there I have every single thing that Lovecraft has written in 2 different forms, a Penguin collection and one from Recycled Bookstore in Denton. Shout out to Recycled Bookstore in Denton.
Wow.
But
wow. Okay, man.
But yeah, that's pretty awesome, man. That's glad to see that you're a fan as well. You like Lovecraft as well? You ever read any of his stuff?
Well, I'm not gonna say I'm not a fan. I'm not as familiar.
Right.
It's not something that I read when I was younger. Like I said, the whole occult thing isn't something I had. I got into a lot of that more in my adult life, in my late 20s, early 30s.
Mm-hmm.
I was involved in a black metal band with some people that were really intensely into Lovecraft and things like that. And I read a lot of that stuff, but I wouldn't say it's ever been a huge influence on the lyrics or on the band. If anything, it's something I would want to read more and read more into in the future. But admittedly, it's not something I've researched a whole lot into.
Oh man, we'll take it for. I'll have to link you some pertinent stories that are maybe space themed or get some inspiration to you or something like that.
No, that's the thing. It's not that I don't know, I don't respect it or but it's also. It seems like it's become such a prevalent thing in death metal the last few years, where like there's sometimes it happens. I mean, I've been following death metal a long time, and like sometimes in the metal scene, there's just certain things that they're everywhere. They're in everybody's.
Yeah, that kind of waves of like trends and stuff.
Yeah, and I guess I just kind of like I don't want any of my bands to maybe fit those brackets, if people read into my lyrics and stuff like that. Not that I'm avoiding it, but you know what I'm trying to say, man.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so next one I got to talk about is Mewn Funeral. It's the one that closes out 2014's Labyrinth Constellation. It's an absolute tour de force, of every member's musicianship and just kind of cohesiveness as a band. Amazing combination of these like lightning fast cascading riffs, again probably Dan and John's work, and then brutal and abrasive vocals from you, and then technical prowess of the drum and bass backbone there. So I know I heard in another interview or read possibly that it was the last song that you guys wrote, I believe, like or for that project, I should say. So was there like kind of like an intention to make that like the closer or something like that?
Well, I mean, looking back, it certainly sounds like it. And if somebody else said that was the last song written, I wouldn't contradict them. It's hard to look back and remember to specifically tell you that, yes, that was the last song written for the project and it was supposed to be so climactic, but it would be hard to say otherwise when you listen to it. So I think that was probably the case. And like I said before, I don't play the guitar. There's a lot of jamming, with just the guitarist and the drummer that goes on, before they go into the recording studio. So whether that was the last one they really hammered in or not, I couldn't tell you. But it is called Mewn Funeral, and I think it is intentional. I wish one of the other guys was here to back me up on it right now because that was like 2 albums ago now and many tours ago. But it was intentional, and we actually lifted that title from an older song. We had a song called Mewn Funeral with a different set of lyrics to it and completely different music that those guys scrapped. They're very there's always going to be a few songs that are in like Artificial Brain heaven that they never used, that they jammed for a month or two, and maybe I even wrote to, and then they were like, no, scrap it, go back to the drawing board. And it's a very meticulous process with the writing with those guys, which frustrated me in the beginning, but I learned to respect it and to try to take that and apply it to my own vocals and lyrics.
Right.
I've learned a lot from those guys. I won't front on that. But yeah, I think we definitely meticulously chose that, to make that Mewn Funeral, because it's such a big climactic song and it finishes out the album. Yeah,
Very much so.
if it's a coincidence, it's a big coincidence.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. And then well, I mean, if you were like me and were kind of like a year or two latecomer to Labyrinth Constellation, backs right into Floating in Delirium, which is 2017's from Infrared Horizon. The lyrics on this one really stuck with me too. The floating in vast delirium, imploding, all sensors are numb, awareness in vacuum, programming lost as I vanish altogether. Now I can see through a new eye. I can learn from a new mind. I imbued and renewed by void. Damn, that's heavy. I really, really like that. Where did you get the idea for something that was that kind of almost like introspective and kind of reflective in that way?
It's really interesting to hear it read out loud. To hear it read back to me. We had agreed at some point collectively that we wanted the second album, Infrared Horizon, to have something to do with artificial intelligence. With Artificial Brain, there's always broad themes. Those guys always bring, there's always some themes they bring to the table, ideas for songs, there's discussions, and then ultimately I pen them to the song. And I used not that I ever really pursued it to the point of like trying to shop it to labels or play live, but I used to rap a lot. I used to write a lot of raps.
Oh, what?
Yeah, I'm 38 now, and when I was in my early 20s, back in the early 2000s, everyone had a mixtape. Everyone was, battling and freestyle. I'm from Long Island. There's a lot of, you'd go to the bars, you'd go hang out, and eventually a couple of people would freestyle. It wasn't a big deal, but I really enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed writing raps to beats. And over the years, what I'm getting at is I really tried to apply it. So when the guys send me an Artificial Brain instrumental, it might be like a 5-minute death metal song with technical parts and tricky time signatures. But I sit there and I try to write the lyrics to the song in the way that I would with a rap beat. In other words, the words have to fit the part. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Like it's not like
with the syllables and timing.
Yeah, it's not like I have a collection of short stories here waiting for an instrumental one day. Like the story. Yeah, the story has to like be written while I'm listening to the instrumental, and in my own head, that's my way of making sure that it starts and stops, at the same time with the music. There's the proportional amount of lyrics I need there for the 3-minute song or the 5-minute song or whatever. And
so you're saying we're not going to get a publication of Big Will's science fiction stories? No,
well,
that's not coming.
No, actually,
what?
I can't really guarantee anything yet, but that is in the works.
All right, you heard it here first. Science fiction from Uncle Buck coming at you.
I really enjoy writing the lyrics, and I want to do something to complement the people to complement the lyrics for the people who care about the lyrics. There are people who don't care what I'm saying, and that's cool too. And death metal is part of the game. There's plenty of CDs in my rack right here that I haven't read the lyrics to.
I'm sure. Yeah. And if you can't see, there's a wall of about 2,000 CDs right behind me. It looks like so.
Yeah. I'm secretly trying to be like Ken's death metal crypt over here.
Right. Yeah.
But what I was saying is just in terms of the you read those lyrics back to me, and if you really look at a lot of my rhyme schemes with the lyrics, I think they kind of resemble like the way a rapper writes their stuff, and that's the reason why. And it's also, to me, it's when you read the lyrics, they really do reflect the cadence, and the flow of the lyrics reflects the cadence and the flow of the song because it's written to the song.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I agree.
So it's that's a big part of it. And then to talk about the theme of it, Artificial, it was supposed to be, the first album is kind of like this more poetic, lost explorer of space and time type of story, and then
a vacant explorer, if you will.
Yeah. Well, there you go. And then Infrared Horizon, it ties it more into artificial intelligence. There's a theme of like the artificial intelligence becoming self-aware. What the lyrics you just read, and a lot of the other lyrics on that album are like what it would be like through the perception of that artificial intelligence as it goes from being lifeless programming, so to speak, to being sentient and conscious. Now I can see through a new mind, all that, now all that sort of thing. I'm renewed by void. The void is this what is it, like that movie Tron. What is it like inside the computer? We don't know. What's it like
Right.
inside the fires and stuff, but so I was trying to get inside the mind of, I guess, artificial intelligence, but like maybe humanizing it a little bit, but so that's what it was about. And then there's kind of short stories that take place within the artificial brain universe. Like you mentioned Vacant Explorer. That's it's funny that I could put, because I'm in my little office area right now, so I could kind of flex and pull stuff out. But Vacant Explorer's
At the ready.
is The Blob.
Nice. Oh man, that's
Picture
excellent.
The Blob, but it takes place on a spaceship, and that was my biggest inspiration for the song Vacant Explorer. But on the new album, there's lyrically a sequel to Vacant Explorer and it also ties it into events on other songs, stuff like that.
Nice.
So that's like Big Will science fiction, is that a lot of the stuff in the artificial brain lyrics tie into one another if you read all the lyrics.
Dude, I can't wait to hear Big Will science fiction and Big Will style fire mixtape coming out pretty soon too. We gotta get back into the rap game.
I'll send you a link to my SoundCloud, but most of the stuff's a little bit older.
Yes, I love it. I love it. So let me ask, what were some of your earliest influences? I know you probably talked about this 100 times on your podcast, but for the people who haven't heard your podcast, what really made you pick up an instrument, or at least, made you kind of take notice of like, hey, there's all this like cool shit out there?
Well, before you get into underground stuff, my mom is a rock and roll person. I mean, she exposed me to Janis Joplin and Jimi Hendrix and
Same.
Yeah, growing up. So
Cream, bread, all that stuff.
Yeah. So it's like, you hear, I mean, there are some people who they grow up in more of a conservative household. So it's like, you hear these stories, people have to hide their metal records. It was never like that with me. Yeah. And my uncle, the reason I have so many horror movies and science fiction and everything, I don't know if you know about like more indie horror movies and B horror movies, but I have an uncle named Frank Henenlotter, who directed Basket Case, which is his most kind of famous cult movie.
That's a crazy movie, man. Crazy practical effects.
Freak thing. That guy keeps Siamese. Yeah. Well, if you've seen Basket Case, do you remember the scene with the twin blonde nurses that discover the doctor with all the knives in her face, and they open the door and there's two twin nurses and they're like, ah?
Maybe. I mean, it's been a long time. But
I get it. It's been a long time. But anyway, if you ever watch that movie Basket Case, that's my mom and my aunt are the twin nurses.
What? Okay, well, yeah. I should probably choose Basket Case. I actually I guest on another horror movie podcast. Shout out to the Dolls of Horror podcast. It's like a two females do this horror podcast, and we talk about all kinds of horror movies, and Basket Case is one of the options for me, like that they're doing coming up. So I got to do that just to be throwing that fun fact in. So shout out to Summer and Jamie and Jesse on Dolls of Horror.
Yeah. You could tell them the twin nurses in that movie are my mother and my aunt, and they actually a few years ago did an interview for the I guess the new DVD feature. They did a little interview behind the scenes thing, and my uncle.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, man. Yeah, so but what I was getting at is he would always send me like that movie The Blob I just showed you. He sent me that when I was a kid. I have a whole bunch when Laserdisc came out, he sent me all of his VHS stuff as a kid. Right. Me and all my friends got with the horror movies went crazy. And that's where the whole fascination with that came in. And then so rock and roll and horror movies are no thing to me as a kid. And then I get a little bit older, Iron Maiden, Pantera, Black Sabbath, that sort of. And then I meet my friend Aaron, whose older brother is full-on death metal, tape trading, grindcore, going to see Napalm Death, the whole thing. He's a little bit older than us, and I started hanging out over there because he had two younger brothers and cousins. Like it was one of those things where if you grew up in a suburban neighborhood, there was one house where a lot of people would hang out and congregate, and that's the house. And we had a little noisecore project. Liquefied Maggots was our noisecore project when I was in high school with a drum machine, total lo-fi noise, and it just progressed from there, man. That guy Adam Rotella, he's actually directing his own real disgusting, gory B horror movies now himself. But he got me into the underground death metal thing crazy, and then from there, probably like 96, 97, 98, I started going to underground shows. I was in a band called Cursed Earth that was more based out of Queens, and I would take the train out. In high school, I didn't have a lot of friends in my own high school, but on Friday nights, after I got off my job at the movie theater down here, I would take the train out to Queens and rehearse with my death metal band. and we would play shows out there, man. And then I had the band Biolich for a few years, and that broke up. And then there was a few years, and then Artificial Brain. So it kind of gradually happened, man. I found metal and found some people that were into metal, and that's how it was.
Yeah, it was kind of the same for us. Like, we're also like kind of in that same vein of like, I had one friend that was super into grindcore, one friend that was only into kind of like the, on rails, like Hatebreed stuff, like much more accessible stuff. One person, who was like basically Metallica, Pantera, or fuck off, so, and then you got me, who's just kind of like, I don't know. It's like a tree, man. I just go in all sorts of directions with music in general, but especially metal. There's just so much out there, as I'm sure you know.
Yeah.
Let's see. Also, can you remind us of the guy who did the album art for Labyrinth Constellation? And I want to make sure to shout him out as well.
Paolo Girardi of
I knew I was going to pronounce that wrong.
Yeah, Paolo Girardi of Italy. He did our first album cover. And he had done work in metal before that. Sam from Artificial Brain usually deals with the artists, and he's a lot more up on the artists that are working in the scene and all the all the metal bands and stuff. So I believe he was probably the one who found Paolo and brought him to our attention or whatever. I think the original painting for Labyrinth Constellation, Dan Gargiulo has.
Oh shit, that's badass.
I'm not jealous. He has a right to that. That's fine. And
right.
I have a tapestry of it.
That's actually what I buy. Like, I always buy a piece of merch from the bands just because I want to support them as well, shout them out. And they have like a flag that's like basically like 4 by 5 feet that you can buy. And it looks so badass, dude. So that'll definitely, once that gets here, that's going to be like right there, man. So very excited about that.
Awesome. Yeah, I enjoyed getting that, man. It was cool. The first time one of my bands had a flag. So yeah, Paolo Girardi, and we actually met him a few years ago. We did a show down in Philly, and he happened to be in Philadelphia. I want to say that he maybe had an art showing or had a piece of his art somewhere or something like that. He wasn't in Philadelphia specifically for our show, obviously, but whatever it was, he managed to come through. And you could we were at the Kung Fu Necktie, which is a club in Philadelphia, which we always love playing. Really cool place. Mm-hmm. And we were just on the street in Philly, underneath kind of like a train overpass type of thing, whatever. And here comes this huge bodybuilder guy in a Man o' War shirt with a fanny pack, like strutting down the street, man. Like you knew it was him from a mile away.
That's confidence right there.
Yeah, man. It was great, man. We took some pictures with him. We met him. He was super nice dude, and yeah, man, he great guy, man. It was really fun to meet that dude. And then for the second album, he was starting to do a lot of bands' artwork. I'm not going to say that correlates with us using him. Maybe a lot of people noticed him from the same thing we noticed him from. Whatever.
Right.
But we wanted to go with someone new for that, and we had the artist Adam Burke do Infrared Horizon. But Paolo's artwork was great for Labyrinth, man. And we've got a lot of traction out of that artwork too, just in terms of people always want it on, like we said, like on a tapestry or on a T-shirt or something like that. It's done well for us.
Yeah, they're both amazing. I don't want to discredit Infrared Horizon's album art as well, but yeah, that just grabbed me. I'm probably biased because it's the first one as well, but it's just so epic, and there's a lot to look at in there, and there's little like Space Needle kind of like architecture back there. It's pretty badass. So I'm very excited to be hanging that. I'm gonna ask about future shows or releases. I just heard right before this that you're getting back to practicing with Afterbirth. I assume on vocals and not just drums, right? So are you guys do you have new material that you guys are writing?
Well, yeah, I think I don't play drums in after what I said. I think you heard on the podcast. What I do when I go to the rehearsal studio that after
you're just practicing. You're just fucking around.
I'll go there early and I'll just bang out my little. I'm like a caveman clicking rocks together on drums compared to the guys who actually play.
Hey, all it takes is time, man. I didn't really take it seriously till I was like 24, and it only takes time. So
yeah, dude. So I just do it for fun, but yeah, I joined Afterbirth on vocals. It's funny you talk about my influences and getting into this and everything, because the first Afterbirth demo with their original singer was Psychopathic Embryotomy in 1994. And they're a local band from here in Long Island.
Awesome name.
When I started getting into all this stuff, like I said, my buddy Adam, who was a few years older than me and tape trading and everything, that was one of the first things he made me a copy of. And the vocals just sounded if you listen today to the first Afterbirth demo from '94, it just sounds like a bullfrog. And he was doing it before a lot of bands were really doing that whole style of guttural, cricket bullfrog vocals, and that was one of my biggest inspirations. Flash forward, that singer, they got back together, and they that singer and them decided not to work together anymore, and he eventually passed away, unfortunately. Rest in peace to him, Matt Duncan. But a period of time passed, and they came to a point where they were going to look for a singer for the band. And I had already been in touch with them because Artificial Brain had been around the scene, and I knew those guys. And they asked me to come down and put vocals on an album they had recorded. That they just instrumentals sitting around, and they kind of branched off from there to the point where now I'm the singer of the band. I've been on 2 albums with them. I can't really talk much about it, but we are going to do a live stream event with Afterbirth eventually.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so we're getting ready to do something for that. Yeah, I sing for Afterbirth, and we've been rehearsing for a few months now, following whatever precautions we have to follow, and that sort of it's it's tough, man. We're trying to do the best we can out here, But with Afterbirth, that's a band that before the pandemic was very old fashioned. In terms of rehearsing, they rehearse every week like clockwork. They don't really send files back and forth to one another, and play on headphones in their house. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No, but they're in there. They're in it to win it.
It's more of an old fashioned, and it's the way I came up. Like I said, when I was in that band Cursed Earth back in the '90s, that's what we did. You rehearse once a week, every week, and you get tight and you get it in the pocket, and that's the way I work. So it's been real cool working with those guys, and it's been a little bit better for my sanity being able to rehearse with a death metal band again after the year that we've had.
Yes, yeah. I mean, yeah, not that we're anywhere near as heavy as you guys, but yeah, we're actually finally writing music again too, and we used the first part of the pandemic, like first 2 months, we just like busted out our 3rd album. So there's been like so much like productivity, even though everybody's been kind of down, like so much new music that's been coming out, which is a perfect segue to, I want to ask you about your current favorite artist. I mean, your shout out game is so strong, possibly the best. So I want to ask two forms of shout out questions. So who are some of your current favorite artists? And also, who do you think is the next big thing in extreme metal, and why is it Blood Incantation?
Well, here's the thing, man. I would even say, and I'm friends with Blood Incantation. I love those guys. But I wouldn't call them the next big thing. They are the big thing. If anything,
right?
They got to start trying to follow up their last album. They did the Cartoon Network appearance thing. They did that. They did the Adult Swim. So they're still out there, man. If you ask me, they still, they can't be next because they're there, man. If anything, they're just going to keep getting bigger, or they're going to, break up and do solo projects or whatever, which I hope doesn't happen. But
yeah.
But next big thing, man. Well, I mean, it looks like Century Media is definitely banking on the whole caveman death metal maggot stomp thing. They just signed Sanguisuga Bog and Frozen Soul, which was rightfully so because of the hype that those bands are building, especially during the pandemic. Yeah. But it kind of took me by surprise because it's Century Media. I mean, that's kind of like the most brutal move Century Media's made in a while that I know about, which is cool. So maybe it'll be Century Media and bigger labels actually paying attention to the trends in the real nitty gritty underground scene, like this caveman death metal thing or the cosmic death metal thing. I don't know, man. And then maybe that in turn will make all that stuff not cool because the big labels are doing it. Sometimes that's how it goes. It revolves for a few years. I don't know, man. It's tough to tell how this stuff revolves, how it's going to come out, man. It always comes and goes in cycles. I just can't see death metal, like old school death metal, and then you got the whole guttural slam thing and the deathcore thing and the beatdown thing. And like, it's just, heavy music is so huge now, and people actually knowing about the old school bands and the guttural nitty gritty bands is like big now, which is crazy to me.
Right.
So I think it's got to come to a point where it dies down and it gets to be like people think death metal is played out again. Eventually, it's going to come to a point where that's like that. Oh, that's what we were doing 5 years ago during the pandemic. We don't do death metal anymore, and that's when I'll feel more at home because I'm an outsider again.
Right. Yeah, it is kind of weird when you see like the stuff that you love or stuff that you're passionate or nerdy for kind of become more accessible. Like it hurts a little bit, but then it's a little exciting too. It's like you can talk to more people about it. So
it happens, and it's like that. You got to process it, and you got to process otherwise, because you don't want to turn into an elitist. I don't want to turn into that guy that's like on a message board somewhere, like you don't even know about 1995. I have
No, no.
you know what I mean? Like, so doing the podcast is kind of like my outlet for that because I get to crack a couple of jokes, get a little sarcastic about, I'm the old guy. I don't know the technology. I don't use Spotify or whatever. And it's all in good fun. But then I challenge myself because I always reach out to classic artists that like Lee Harrison from Monstrosity,
Mhm.
Trevor from Obituary, Mike from Nocturne. Like I was talking before, Seppo from Adramalich and Demigod. People that
Mhm.
I wanted to interview 20 years ago when I was a teenager. You know what I mean? And that's been a beautiful experience to talk to those guys. But I always challenge myself. You'll always see mixed in younger artists,
Right.
and I just let Tom and Justin, who co-host the podcast with me, mix in some newer artists that I'm not familiar with because they're a little younger than me and more up on stuff. And
Right.
and that challenges me because when I do the research, I got to listen to those albums. I got to check out those people and what they're about, and all that sort of thing. Because I always try to do thorough research for the show,
Mhm.
and it keeps me in tune with what's going on. So instead of being like, I'm not gonna name names, but like some of my friends who are my age, who are kind of bitter about the Maggot Stomp bands and Sanguisuba Bog only has an 11-minute EP, but they're selling 20 T-shirts. Wow, I'm not gonna cry about it. I
Right.
interviewed. I talk to them. And I just enjoy it from a spectator point of view. I
Yeah.
look at it, to sum it up, really, like one of my biggest influences for the podcast. I don't listen to a lot of metal content.
Mhm.
I listen to shows and YouTube channels here and there, but the main thing is, if you know Vlad TV, the hip hop um, YouTube channel, he
I
interviews
don't know.
he's branched out and he does a lot of true crime and gangsters now too. He does interviews, but he mainly does hip hop. And he's
Right.
an older guy, older than me, and he started as a DJ, but he always keeps in tune with what the younger generation is doing. He interviews younger rappers. He interviews and like that's kind of what the podcast. I don't want to just be the old elitist guy who hates everything that's young. I want to interview the younger artists. I want to keep it in tune with the scene. I don't want to
Right.
lose touch with the scene and just be a bitter old guy because I
Yeah.
know a lot. And you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. You don't want to be like Aspid or go home. You know what I mean? So that's not fair, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
man.
I like to think of it as it's like picking up rocks. You know what I mean? Like people, you can't get mad at somebody for how much weight that they're carrying, right? Like, yeah, there's these big ass boulders back there, but maybe they started their journey right here. They can go back and pick them up if they want to, but hey, they're just picking up their own little stones along the way. And as long as everybody's kind of collecting them in one place for everybody, like we have now, with the internet and with YouTube channels, just about it, it's there's no it's benefits everybody, I think. You know what I mean? So to go
Yeah,
sideways rather than backwards, right? Because the backward stuff is already always there, but checking out side projects and like underrated people, I think, is like a little more exciting. I find more exciting stuff that way, I think. So, you know,
100%, and it's a good analogy too because at the end of the day, we're all as metalheads, as fans, as listeners, we're all curating our own experience. If you spend your time hating on a band that's bigger than your favorite, or a band that's sold out or whatever the hell, like I mean, I'm not abreast of certain things that are huge right now because I spend my time as a fan and as a listener listening to what I like. You know
right.
what and I support random bands from Long Island that people don't know about, or I buy the Adramalich discography because it reminds me of when I was a teenager, man. Like that's it. It keeps it fun for me. And if I don't like something, I kind of just like I'm not going to name names, but there's certain bands that I kind of find their shtick annoying or whatever.
Hmm.
But I'm not going to make that my whole podcast. I'm not going to sit here and rag on.
Yeah. Yeah, don't throw your rocks, right? Just show people rock. You collect them for yourself. You don't want to poke people with them.
I like
Um,
that. Good
Yeah,
analogy.
yeah. Well, thank you. So who are some of your current favorites? I mean, it doesn't have to be metal, but who are some artists that are kind of keeping you going right now?
There was there was that band Altered Dead that just put out
Altered.
an album. I just figured it out last week, and I'm going to be talking about it on an upcoming episode of the podcast. But
Mhm.
the name of their album escapes me, but that was a really good album that just came out, and it's got a sick guitar tone. It's not doing the whole copycat Entombed HM2 tone. It's got a really cool tone though.
Mhm.
Um, that was really cool. There is an album that I am going to be talking about on the podcast, but I'll tell you. Speaking of guitar tones too, man, I think they were just called Blood Death.
Blood Death.
I
That's
know,
heavy.
I know, from New Zealand. And the cover of it, dude, it popped up on my algorithm on YouTube, and the cover is like a skeleton with sunglasses on, with a boombox, or with a no, with an
Yes.
amplifier.
Yeah, I
Well, yeah,
love that. I love that tongue-in-cheek stuff. You know.
I was like 90% chance this is corny, 10% chance this is sick, and it was
Yeah.
sick. It was
Yeah,
really
that's awesome.
sick, old school raw death metal. And when you hear, I mean, everything is old school raw death metal, but this is the real deal.
Mhm.
Um, Other new stuff that I'm really feeling. Well, there's a band that I talked about a while, Basilisk,
Mhm.
like the Dungeons and Dragons monster Basilisk from
Right, right.
Pennsylvania. They have an album out that's really cool. I really enjoyed that. Um, there's
Basilisk, also the name of the eventual artificial intelligence that will rule us all, right? So I'm saying, you ever heard that theory?
no, I'm not that deep into it, man.
Oh,
I
okay,
hope,
well, never. We won't go there. But
I hope to be the ghost in the machine by then, man. I hope to be out of this place by then.
yeah. Right, right.
But yeah, oh man. And I'm trying on the spot. I'm trying to think of some other cool stuff. Well, if you like hardcore,
Mhm.
there's a really cool band that I like called Jab. We
Cab.
yeah, Jab, Jab from Long Island. And they're a great band. I'm sure if you like hardcore, anybody could appreciate them. But if you're from Long Island and you're familiar with kind of like some more like '90s old school Long Island hardcore bands, when the Long Island hardcore scene was really establishing itself, separate from the New York hardcore scene, because everybody knows NYHC and Madball, Agnostic Front, respect to all that.
Right,
Like
right.
we're out here in Suffolk County, Long Island, and bands like Neglect and Tension in the '90s kind of set the pace for us growing up. And I feel like this band Jab from Long Island really does a great job honoring that kind of style.
Gotta check
I
Jab out.
Yeah, I just bought their tape from Bandcamp the other day. They're really cool. There's a band called Rotting Kingdom that I like. They're from down south somewhere. I don't want to say the wrong state and fuck it up, but there's a band called Rotting Kingdom from down south that does more of like a slow paced death doom thing,
Mhm.
not stoner doom, but more that kind of European style of death doom.
Like a pallbearer type music there.
Along those lines, but not really clean vocals. There's like growly, brutal vocals for the most part. There's a picture of a big, huge castle with a landscape on the front, and it sounds like that.
Like a bell witch type
Yeah, so
type
not
stuff.
not as
Yeah,
yeah. Now, but yeah, now you're hotter. Now you're hotter. Now
right.
you're hotter.
Not one 80-minute long track about sorrow, but something
Yeah, they
along
break it up.
those lines.
Maybe they did it the smart way. This Rotting Kingdom band, they put out a short EP that I just
Oh,
got
okay, yeah.
a final, man. So maybe that's how you got to do it with the Doom to catch people like me that are a little more fast paced.
Yeah, I feel like it's that is kind of the way of at least like the near future now is like just singles like crazy, or at least like 3-4 song EPs. Like most of the bands that I've been interviewing so far have like all kind of been doing that, like either in addition to or like in between releases, or almost exclusively that just like a single every couple months or something like that. So we'll see if we can maybe do that for ourselves too. Oh,
It's a little,
yeah, go
but
ahead.
not control. I was gonna say it's. I mean, if you look at it, I love vinyl, I love cassettes, but that's a little bit. It's a little bit of an outdated, like kind of model for releasing music. I mean, I'll admit that with technology, what it is, the internet, you can record music, you can collaborate on music easier, and
Right.
with Bandcamp and Spotify, yeah, put out a 3-song EP, a 4-song EP. I get it, man. It's sign of the times, but it does make sense.
Yeah, yeah. And I have one for you. It's, I guess, technically not a band. It's only one person. I was curious if you've ever heard Disfiguring the Goddess. It's this one man project from Cameron Argon, who is going to be on in a couple weeks. But do you know who I'm talking about?
I I hate to tell you, I'm interviewing that guy tonight.
Oh, for real? That's so funny, dude.
Yeah.
You beat me to the punch, man. Well, yeah, his latest album, Soothe. I mean, I've liked him since like 2013 Sleeper or something, but dude, he's got some crazy like bullfrog vocals, and his guitar tone is crazy on some of his albums. Crazy drum machine stuff. Also has his own podcast. So yeah, definite shout out to Cam, dude. He's doing some crazy work.
It's really funny that you mentioned that, because doing this interview with you right now is like my break from listening, Figuring the Goddess, and listening to his stuff all day long the last day and a half and today, because
dude,
doing that guy
I,
in like 3 or 4 hours. It's crazy.
yeah, I bet you're rattled right now, man, because it's some he goes ham on the slam, dude. It's
Oh
crazy,
yeah,
man.
well, it's also. I mean, well, I saw in a comment section on one of his things. Somebody called it slambient. Like ambient
Slambia.
slam.
That's good,
But
yeah, because it's got some like kind of textured, kind of ministry-esque production going on and stuff.
but I love it. That's why I really like it because it's not. They like he leans into the electronic side of it, man, and he's a
Yeah,
DJ element. Yeah, especially that new
yeah,
stuff that he just put out.
yeah.
It's really cool material, man. I love it.
Yeah, yeah. I love that it's not predictable, really anything, not just disfiguring the goddess, but like stuff that subverts expectations, especially like in this kind of very popular right now medium of metal, So yeah, shout out to Disfiguring the Goddess and Big Chocolate, his DJ project too.
Yeah,
All right,
yeah,
so I got to put you on the spot again. I know we mentioned Magic the Gathering at the beginning, so
yep.
I was going to ask, and probably still will ask, if your band was a dish, what would it be? So be thinking of that too. But I got to ask, if your band was a Magic card, what would it be? I think I have a pretty good answer. I've been thinking about it for a little bit, and I think it's probably got to be Elish Norn or something. Something from Phyrexia for sure.
Oh, well, all right. Well, see now, like you're deeper into the lore than me. Yeah, you got me on the spot. If any, I could probably give you a Dungeons and Dragons monster.
Oh, do it, do
Yeah,
it. Is it
I,
what is it called? A cacodemon?
sorry to switch formats on you.
No, that's fine.
Hold, I because this will allow me to flex my
Uh-oh.
D&D monstrous man.
There you go. There you go.
I,
That big blue binder in there is my manuals right there.
I keep it on my bookshelf as like inspiration for the lyrics. Well, I gotta say this. What is this? This is called a shambling mound in D&D, and it's
Oh,
like a
hell yeah.
big. I mean, that kind of looks like me pretty much, man. That's me right there. Put a pair of sunglasses on that, and give it like an embalmer shirt, and you're good to go.
Oh
So
man. Okay, I just you just nailed it for me. All right, it's got to be Gerard Golgari Lich for all the Magic players out there. It's a black green. He's like a mold kind of, resurrection kind of thing. He's like a dwarf zombie. It's got to be that.
yeah,
Okay.
it's got to be like vegetatious kind of
Yeah.
necro like monster. Yeah. All right.
Something with mold, something very wet and sticky.
Or like
All right, and
like dead ent or something. I don't know.
yeah, yeah. All right, so if your band was a dish, what do you think it would be? I'll start you off. I mean, if we're still going with the space theme, which you don't have to, but I just kept coming back to like this image of like a freeze-dried ice cream sandwich and a few of those ready-to-eat astronaut food packages, but they've been like ripped open and they're kind of like cascading around in a chaotic yet surprisingly beautiful pattern, forcing you to like, float around the cabin trying to catch all the tasty morsels around you.
I like that. We could work with that, but the thing with Artificial Brain is that we always mix it up. We mix the guttural vocals with like the elegant black metal atmosphere and stuff.
Right.
So Artificial Brain would be like if you took that futuristic, technologically advanced packaged astronaut food, freeze-dried ice cream, and then ignorantly dropped it into a bowl of regular ice cream and just mixed it all around together.
Nice.
And yeah, and then that was like the crunchy part of your ice cream is futuristic freeze-dried ice cream. That's Artificial Brain.
Excellent, man. I love it, dude. Well, once again, I mean, thank you so much, Will, for being here. Big Will, aka Uncle Buck. Make sure to go check him out with Buckshot Facelift. Buckshot Facelift, Afterbirth, Artificial Brain, new music coming from all three, possibly.
Yeah, I'll give you the rundown, man.
Okay.
Afterbirth, Artificial Brain album coming out later this year. We're working on the vocals right now.
All right.
Afterbirth, Four Dimensional Flesh just came out last year. We're already working on new material. Buckshot Facelift, on a little bit of a hiatus right now because members are doing family stuff like that. But the band will be back eventually. We got stuff in the bag. But certain members of Buckshot Facelift are in the band Reeking Aura with Ryan from Earthly Trance. And we have a 3-song EP on Bandcamp, and we're working on a full-length album. So the only thing slowing down a whole bunch of new albums by my bands is the pandemic and travel things, because all my bands are spread out across New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Long Island, Brooklyn. Everyone's everywhere nowadays. And of course, some people are doing the family thing nowadays. So But yeah, you know, the podcast keeps me busy, man. There's always a new episode of Heavy Hole every week, wherever people check out the podcasts. Spotify, iTunes, whatever, Fireside FM. And in terms of the bands, man, I always have something popping, and I'll always be talking about it in the Heavy Hole Podcast Facebook or on the show. But that new Artificial Brain should be out as soon as we get these vocals tied up, and then Colin Marston is going to mix and master it. And
Yes.
Profile Flow Records is going to put it on their conveyor belt, and it'll be, maybe they might have a few bands ahead of it. I don't know, so I can't tell you when it's coming out, but that's what's up.
But it's on the processing line. It's being assembled. It's in the works. All right. So shout out to Reeking Aura. Make sure to go check that out. New Artificial Brain, new Artie Brain. I'm so excited for that. And everybody go check out Heavy Hole Podcast if you want some back alley post-show interviews and some atheist discography listening barbecues. All right. So once again, Will, thank you so much for being here, man. I appreciate it, dude.
My pleasure, man. Thank you. Appreciate it, man.
No problem. Take care.
Later, dude.
Later.